the Sustainability Management Master's Program, you're answering one simple question. Do you care about your future generation? If you care about your kids, their grandkids, then you care about sustainability. And a sustainability manager is someone who has the tools to make people understand how they can contribute towards developing a sustainable world. We have both part-time and full-time students. Our curriculum is 30 hours. Instead of thesis, we have a research project course and a seminar course which provides them with the kind of research background they will need to be successful in their job. But at the same time, sustainability is not always everything about environment. It also relates to the business. They will take a sustainable business strategies course. They will take a project management course. Most of these courses are going to be taught by industry people, the people who are doing sustainability on a daily basis as a part of their job. Any organization that has a large number of employees and has a physical infrastructure, they will have to have a sustainability office. If you have the passion to develop and maintain a sustainable world, come to us and we will help you shape your passion into a career which will create an impact. Pleasure to introduce our speaker today, John Paul Nibian, goes by JP. So JP is a graduate engineer with Dewberry Engineers and specializes in GHG emissions analysis and Envision certification. So his first completed inventory was Dewberry's first ever internal inventory. And that tells you something because again, like he graduated only in 2022. So he's already making impacts. And since then, he has been the internal subject matter expert for inventory procedures and protocols. JP had his ENVSP in 2020 and has focused on different types of transportation infrastructure. He received his BS and MS in environmental and ecological engineering from Purdue University. Rusita, can you mute your computer? Thanks. So today, JP will talk about Envision and its role in a sustainable transportation future. Welcome, JP.
Cool. Yeah, so thank you, Professor Sarkar, Khalid, for inviting me today. I'm very happy to be here and talk to you guys. I did not know actually that Leslie did a presentation on Envision last year, so hopefully this won't be too much of a review for those in the class. But
no, like audience has changed. Don't worry.
Okay, good. Okay, cool. So just to kind of hop into things before we even talk about Envision, I think we need to first describe what transportation infrastructure actually is. So to define it very quickly, transportation infrastructure are the structures and systems promoting and facilitating the movement of people, goods, and services. So for us here in the New York City metro area, that includes the path, the subway, the buses, but that also means the roads, bridges, tunnels, ports, and airports that serve this very densely populated area. Transportation is important, or transportation infrastructure is important because it connects communities, it drives businesses, and presents an opportunity to reduce inequality and or address previous injustices. I'm sure you all have either learned about or heard about Robert Moses and his unfortunately lasting impact on the fabric of the city. So I'm just going to leave it at that. So now that we have a basic understanding of transportation infrastructure, we also need to understand what sustainability is. Sustainability as a concept is built from the National Environmental Policy Act, also known as NEPA, which states that infrastructure should, quote, create and maintain conditions under which man and nature can exist in productive harmony and fulfill the social, economic, and other requirements of the present and future generations of Americans. So therefore, infrastructure should not only meet the needs of the project, but also meet the needs of the surrounding community and ecology. This feeds into the concept of the triple bottom line, which describes that sustainability is the nexus of a prioritized community, so the people, the ecological functions, the planet, and the economic viability, or the profit. So So you may have heard of other sustainability rating systems, but they're usually sector specific. LEED is another very notable rating system, at least in my experience, and their main focus is buildings. There are other rating systems available for roads specifically, airports, and even parking lots, but no US system until very recently has been able to cover all types of infrastructure. The difficulty with infrastructure is that the timelines associated with their development are usually very, very long. Projects are usually very large and they take time to acquire funding. To add to the timeline, construction takes a long time as well. And as the graphic suggests, the lifespan of the built infrastructure takes a long time. With these very, very, very long timelines, the scale of our decisions that we make today magnify as time goes on. Before we can talk about Envision specifically, we need to briefly introduce the organization that manages it. The Institute for Sustainable Infrastructure, or ISI, is an educational and research organization that was founded by the American Public Works Association, the American Society of Civil Engineers, and the American Council of Engineering Companies. They were founded in 2010 as the managing organization of the Envision framework in the US, but have since expanded to 9 other countries in 5 continents. All right, here's the big reveal. So Envision is a sustainability rating system that, as alluded to, is working to solve that disconnect between sustainability and infrastructure. Envision was developed by the Institute for Sustainable Infrastructure and the Zofnass Program for Sustainable Infrastructure at the Harvard University Graduate School of Design. This graphic here I think is super helpful as it shows all the different types of infrastructure and different types of projects that Envision covers, and there's an arrow that points directly to where transportation fits into the conversation. The rating system is broken down into 64 credits, organized into 5 categories: quality of life, leadership, resource allocation, natural world, and climate and resilience. What Envision prides itself in comparison to other rating systems is its flexibility. With the 5 different credit categories we will go over, any infrastructure project, as shown in the previous slide, will have an opportunity to earn any of the awards listed here on the left. Scoring is based on the percentage of points earned in your submission process, with platinum being the highest award. To earn the minimum award, a project will need to earn 20% of the earned points, and 50% of the total points earned is required to earn Envision Platinum. The first credit category is quality of life. These credits award points for owners doing the quote-unquote right project or projects that serve the local community. This includes consistent communication with the community and local advocacy groups for input on project details, and implementing processes and procedures that will serve the community throughout the entire life of the project. The leadership category is up next with 2 types of credits that are grouped in this category. The first presents points for providing effective leadership, collaboration, and commitment. This means that sustainability must be a core tenet for both the project and within the organizations that will own and operate the project. If both the project and the managing organizations are both committed to sustainability, the project has a higher likelihood of serving their communities better, not for just this project that we're working on or trying to verify, but for other future projects. The second set of credits focus on expanding opportunities for performance improvement. This includes planning for long-term project utility and community economic development. The resource allocation categories credits allow points for ecological footprint reductions related to operational and construction material, energy, and water usage. The highest number of points is typically associated with a 100% reduction of usage and documentation showing the strategies involved with reducing that usage. The natural world category also allocates points for ecological footprint reductions but in this case, it's related to the project's external impact. A project can earn the highest level of achievement by fully remediating the previous ecological impact, but typically it's within a sliding scale. The last category is climate and resilience. The first grouping of credits is related to climate change mitigation and air pollution reduction. These credits require both a quantitative and qualitative analyses of their reduction strategies. The second group of credits allocate points for reducing vulnerabilities, improving resilience and flexibility, and adapting to changing operating conditions. These credits ask for a comprehensive risk and resilience plan and how the project will address those risks identified. Now that we have a somewhat decent understanding of the rating system as a whole, I just wanted to show you what a normal manual credit sheet describer looks like. So the manual is probably the single most important document in the Envision verification process, as it describes all the necessary information for each credit. As shown by this first picture, each credit page starts with a credit number and title. The manual is sorted in the same order I discussed the previous slides and are, as you can see, in numerical order. So if you zoom into that first page, you can see these, it's highlighted, the intent or the purpose of the credit, and then the metric of the credit or how the credit will be measured. It's very clear and exact for each exact credit. So it's important to double check what you may need in terms of documentation for this credit, as you might be supporting, the credit for what you think is what the credit is asking for rather than what the credit is actually looking for. And then finally, with each credit, there is a rubric that describes how the project can achieve higher levels of achievement. And you can see it's somewhat of a sliding scale, but it's a bit misleading. As a reminder, awards are given based on the percentage of points earned, so it's in your best interest to earn the most amount of points possible per credit. Important things to remember as well is that there are, it is technically more difficult to earn higher levels of achievement, but it's not necessarily linear. Also, there are credits that are identified that not necessarily cover every level of achievement. And below this, in this section here, you can see that there is a lot more, general information about the specific types of documentation that are needed to earn the specific levels of achievement as described in the manual. So now you know everything about Envision. How do you use it? Envision in practice starts with the makeup of the team. With Dewberry, we have over 10 people certified to work on Envision projects within the company, but project teams are typically within 3 to 5 people. We have weekly internal meetings that provide opportunities to ask a larger group about how the project, how we can use the project to, address certain credits, who to ask for certain documentation, and give progress reports on our credit sheet progress, for lack of better words. The owner and the contractor both at least have one representative as well, and they're usually available for us to ask them questions about our specific documentation needs. The frequency of the meetings with either the owner or the contractor depend on the needs of the project. In terms of the tracking and communication, there are 2 tools available, at least within Dewberry. So ISI for any single project provides a pre-assessment tool, which project teams can walk through together to discover the pathway to achieve a specific award. During the actual verification process, we, Dewberry, keep an internal tracker to keep track of the prospective award, the status of specific documents, and the progress of the cover sheets. And you can see a dashboard on your right-hand side. This diligent note-taking and tracking ensures that progress is actually being made, and as teams move and shake, as I'll talk about more later, it keeps our notes in check. At the end of the project, we also develop a lessons learned document that describes the best practices that we found during the actual Envision process and things that the owner can implement in their next Envision project. There are a few common pitfalls or problems that I found with completing Envision verifications. The first, I guess, problem is bad organization. So with a singular Envision verification process, you will deal with almost, or at least a minimum, of 100 to 200 different documents that need to be formatted and submitted. As mentioned before, I think I mentioned it. Our team uses Microsoft Teams as the main document manager. There also needs to be special thought towards the file structure holding those documents, which differs between each company. Finally, as I just said in this last slide, we have our own internal tools to track the progress throughout the Envision process. But regardless of whatever the team may use, it just needs to be accurate to the needs of the current project. So the next possible pitfall is the team turnover or shuffling. All of the Envision projects that I've worked on started before I joined the company full-time in 2023. With that came a lot of difficulty in learning on the fly the details of the project, the regular contacts, and even just the Envision process as a whole. But what I found is that projects with more accessible organization and file paths were easy to jump into in the middle of a project than those without, which seems rather intuitive, but it's easier said than done, unfortunately. Next thing is with any Envision project, there are also a large variety of people you will meet and work with, all with their specific organizational and technical backgrounds. With that, most of them, honestly, have not had much experience with Envision and the Envision process. So with asking for specific documentation, it's sometimes based on the name of a previously agreed upon plan name, like a monitoring and maintenance plan or a invasive species plan. So that if you tell somebody you're looking for that specific document, unless they name it that specific way, that just gets lost in translation. What we found the main solution is to provide the specific manual language, like in those pages I went over a couple slides ago. The language in there is clear enough to give a baseline, at least, of what the documents we need are, and it usually helps jog the memory of whoever we're asking from what documents they have that they can send to us. The descriptors within the manual are also very prescriptive, meaning if that first batch of documents sent does not meet the described requirements, we can always go back and ask them for more information or, more details or a different set of documents if it doesn't match at all. This next described problem, though, is something that you and the rest of the Envision team will need to understand before asking for documentation. ISI is especially particular about the difference between project-specific and universal programmatic documentation. More often than not, ISI prefers project-specific documentation, which can be difficult to come by for owners who standardize a lot of practices for efficiency's sake. So it's up for you as the Envision specialist and the Envision team to describe the documentation needs clearly and as written in the manual. But even if you provide the most clear descriptions of the needs, sometimes the owners, contractors, etc., do not get back to you at all. If that's the case, there isn't really much you can do in the meantime, except sending consistent reminders, pressing other channels, or devising potential backup contacts. Oh, did my pictures not load? Oh, there they are. Okay, cool. Okay, sorry. So now that we've kind of gone over the entirety of the Envision framework, I now would like to talk about the Envision projects that I've had the pleasure of working on over the last year and change that I've been with Dewberry. So The first of which is actually in your backyard, just across the river. It's the Times Square shuttle station of the Times Square 42nd Street MTA station. So if you didn't know, the Times Square 42nd Street station was one of the first stations built within the city, with the shuttle itself opening in 1918. This Times Square shuttle runs directly between the Times Square 42nd Street station and the Grand Central 42nd Street station, providing fast and efficient cross-town service. The line itself takes a lot of congestion from the 7 train that runs along the same route, and with that, the shuttle runs more frequently between those 2 stations. The station before, as you can see in the pictures that I thought didn't load, it was very dark, confusing, and most importantly, inaccessible for customers with disabilities. I don't know the groups of people that are in this class, but if you grew up in the city or around the city, you probably remember what the station looked like, and this might jog some memories. I'm not sure. But in 2010, plans to redesign the Times Square shuttle portion of the station were approved, and construction was completed in 2020. As you can see by the pictures, the corridor was expanded, the track and the platform were completely redesigned, and a new tunnel was built to the 42nd Street Bryant Park station. The MTA is especially proud of the artwork, which you can kind of see in the leftmost picture and the rightmost picture, as it was set to match the new, bright local character of the Times Square as a whole, compared to how dark, dingy, scary the station was before. I don't have a picture of it right now, but there is also a historic lintel from the Knickerbocker Hotel, which is right next to the Times Square shuttle station. And it was preserved as an homage to its roots as one of the original stations. Service was also improved with each trip because the MTA decommissioned 1 track and straightened the remaining 2 tracks and added 1 extra car to the train. The commissioned track and extra car made service more efficient and thus increased service by 50% over the lifespan of the project. The straightened track also lowered track noise, making station quality better. I also don't have pictures of this, but the Grand Central Terminus also received similar track and platform renovations. The Envision process for this project, I feel, is a bit unorthodox because from the beginning, the project was identified to act as a quote-unquote baseline for the MTA sustainability processes, policies, and procedures. Therefore, they submitted the project with the stock policies and procedures that they've had for however many years for this verification. While they applied for the highest award, Platinum, the project actually did not receive any award at all. The project was then tabled as funds for resubmission were not available. Fast forward 4 years, construction has been completed, and the project received funding for the second submission. Unfortunately, the project ran into almost every single pitfall that I listed in that previous slide. But nevertheless, the project was able to earn the Envision Verified Award, as you can see on that right-hand side, which happens to be the first ever Envision Award in the MTA history. So it's very exciting. And that was only approved, I think, 2 to 3 weeks ago. So very, very fresh news. I'm very excited to share that with everybody. Going down a bit on the Eastern Seaboard, we're going to turn our focus to the DC metro area. So for those unaware, the 495 Capital Beltway is the highway loops that surrounds Washington, DC. With many of DC's workforce living outside of the city, the Beltway provides roadway connections between the surrounding neighborhoods. But with the sheer density of those neighborhoods, the traffic around the entire roadway is usually very brutal and not very exciting. But to help with congestion and to earn extra revenue for the owner, the Virginia Department of Transportation, VDOT planned for the installation of high occupancy toll lanes or hot lanes. So these hot lanes encourage carpooling as they provide free tolls for cars who carpool. This translates to a net reduction in vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions throughout the life of the project. The right-of-way of the project will also be lined with a new multi-use trail that will connect both current and future trail networks. Scotts Run Nature Preserve is also nearby, and the impacts of construction were fully mitigated. A new parking lot will also be constructed for residents or visitors to come to the park without overburdening the local community with the extra parking. This project differs from the previous one in Times Square because Envision was implemented from the design phase. This directive came from the owner itself, mandating that the project earn at least Envision Silver. This meant that the Envision team sat in with the biweekly design meetings from the very beginning of the project. As the project transitioned to construction, the Envision team started meeting more regularly with the contractor to ensure that the construction-specific documentation was being recorded and collected. The verification process is still in progress, with construction looking to be completed next year. So we'll see how that goes. The last project I wanted to talk about today is even more south, outside of Orlando, Florida. Orlando is and has been rapidly growing over the last few years, and development is slated to ramp up more in the next few decades. Between Lake and Orange counties is this previously underdeveloped area called Wellness Way. Within the last 10 years or so, all the parcels of land were allocated for development, but there currently is no adequate roadway connection within the area. To address that, the Central Florida Expressway Authority, or CFX, decided to build out a new connection between the two counties. The new roadway is slated to have a lot of new sustainable technologies implemented into it. First of all, the roadway will have a multi-use path similar to the 495 Next project, which will also connect to future and existing trails in the area. Next, a wildlife corridor will be constructed as to not fully disrupt the migration patterns of local animals. Solar panels will be constructed on site, and the energy produced will offset the energy used for lighting and all electronic tolling. And some of those solar panels will also be floating in the stormwater retention ponds that we'll also install. In-road charging panels will be installed as well over a small portion of the roadway for participants and the owners, CFX, to understand the viability of in-road charging in their operations. Receivers will be installed onto the trucks themselves so they can receive power from the roadway. And as I briefly mentioned before, all stormwater ponds are being constructed, which will collect and treat all stormwater produced on the site, minimizing the long-term effects of the roadway on the water quality of the local environment. So like the 495 Next project, this project was also designed with Envision in mind, and CFX intends to implement Envision in future projects. The owners and the Dewberry Envision team even drafted special provisions detailing that the contractor must provide enough documentation to meet the requirements of 9 different credits. This project is also unique as it is being constructed with 3 separate segments, but we also have a variety of documentation between the 3 segments with also 3 separate contractors. ISI does allow for the submission of a cover sheet with pending documentation or documentation that we submitted at the end of construction. Construction for the first segment with the first contractor is set to begin very, very soon, as the contractor was awarded recently. So over the last few weeks, we've been working very closely with them to ensure that the special provisions are met with that first road segment. We're still looking, I think, or CFX, I should say, is still looking for other contractors for the other 2 sections. And so once we nail those down, we will also talk with them about documentation requirements. And so here's some pictures as well on the roadway. So on the left-hand side, you have a cool aerials. You can kind of see the retention ponds. Along the right-of-way also are the trails. And you can also see, as of right now, there is no development. But like I said, this is slated very soon to be developed. On the right-hand side is a typical of the actual roadway with the trail on the side. So for those who are interested, I guess, in outdoor recreation, they can use the trails as intended. So that's very cool. Um, so uh, I've obviously spent this entire lecture talking about Envision and the work I've done with it since I've only joined Dewberry about a year and a half ago. But I don't think my bio that Professor Sarkar said explained fully how much Envision has played a role in my early career. So I first earned my Envision Sustainability Professional, or ENVSP credential in 2020, which was my sophomore year of college, which also happened to be the very beginning of the pandemic. I initially had an internship lined up for that summer with an engineering firm, but unfortunately got canceled like a lot of things that year. Luckily enough, soon after I earned my ENVSP, I was able to work with ISI directly in their education department under their former education director, Lindsay Geiger. And special shout out to Leslie for being here, the current education director of ISI. So if you've earned or will earn your ENVSP soon, some of those trainings on the website were written by me, or at least the first drafts were. And then on top of that, maintaining my ENVSP throughout my college career was pretty easy, as the student membership was free and the trainings were also not too labor intensive. My next Envision experience came when I was working with Dewberry as an intern the summer of 2022. At the time, Dewberry was bidding for the JFK renovation, which I think is set to begin soon. And JFK's owners, the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey, have a very, very close relationship with ISI and Envision, where they have written the need for an award for their very large capital projects. Thus, that summer, I was tasked with creating a preliminary Envision application based on the available Port Authority documentation, like the environmental assessment. I was in the middle of my master's at the time, so I had to leave before the final submission of that bid, which I don't think we earned. But at the end of that summer, I did receive a return offer, and I joined full-time at Dewberry in June of 2023. So with my time at Dewberry thus far, I've played a large role in each of the 3 projects that I've described today. My hard work culminated in the Times Square Shuttle project, which not only was the first Envision project, as I said before, for the MTA, but it was also the very first verified project of my own career as well. So I'm very excited to progress further in my career. And just within Dewberry, the number of staff within the company that are Envision certified is only growing. Just to kind of wrap up this whole presentation, I just want to summarize into 4 main points. So at the beginning of the presentation, we defined transportation infrastructure and sustainability and described that there is a current gap in tools facilitating their nexus. Thus, ISI and Envision are positioning themselves to fill that gap and are encouraging project owners to do the same with their projects. I'll walk through some of those projects that I've personally worked on throughout my short career, and I finally explained how Envision has played a role in that short career. For those that are interested to learn more about Envision, I just want to quickly plug the ISI virtual conference, which will be held on November 6th and 7th. I and the project team from the Times Square Shuttle will be presenting a virtual poster board about the project, so you and whoever else you would tell about will have the opportunity to learn more about the project and ask questions to the MTA directly about that project. And with that, I'd like to open up for questions. I think I ended a quick bit early, but thank you guys.
Cool.